Hi, and welcome to the Ministry Path podcast, where we're finding mentors and meaningful practices along the ministry path. My name is Danny Chan. I'm the ministerial director for the Southern California Conference. Welcome back to the podcast, or welcome if this is your first time. I am so excited to introduce our guest today, Aren Rennacker, who is the director of the Growing Young Leadership Program for the Pacific Union Conference. Welcome, Aren. It's so great to have you.
Thank you, Danny. Appreciate you having me.
Wow, it's amazing to have you here, and it's been great to get to know you over the past few months as you've taken on this brand new role. Tell us, what is your official title? Did I get it right?
Yeah,
And then
you
tell
got
us
it.
a
Yeah.
little bit more about it.
Yeah, very fortunate. I'm the director for Growing Young Leaders, which is a newer program with the Pacific Union, which, for those who don't know, is kind of the West Coast of Adventism. So California, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and Hawaii. So I'm enjoying it, and I'm super lucky to be in the role.
Yeah, and then the role more specifically is to do what?
Yeah, so this is a program that creates pathways for the future leaders of the Adventist Church, predominantly through education and pastoral ministry. So I get to oversee a program that offers scholarships and mentorship to young people who are open to studying education and theology to pursue careers in teaching and pastoring. We have about 50 scholars in the program currently in our colleges, including some who have already graduated, but about 50 who are studying right now. And so get to support them and walk alongside of them as they study and prepare for those careers. And then another big part of my job is the future leaders, so those who are in high school and academy, and sharing with them about the opportunities that there are to work in the Adventist Church, to pursue careers in teaching and ministry, which is also a lot of fun. So I get to travel around, do a lot of speaking, a lot of meeting with students, talking with students, answering questions about careers in college and these things. And we also get to do some media work as well and tell that story of what it means to potentially have a future in the Adventist Church as a teacher or pastor.
Amazing. So sometimes people wonder, hey, what is the Pacific Union and what does it do? And here we see an example of an investment from the Pacific Union on identifying and developing and mentoring our future leaders, right?
Yeah. I have said to some people before that we know that the Adventist Church is not always at the forefront of every innovation. We're not always early adopters to everything. Churches move slow, and sometimes that's for good reason.
Mhm.
But sometimes churches do show initiative and innovation, and I think this is one example of it.
Yeah.
Is the church saying, we want to make sure that the future is strong. We want to invest now in our leadership, and Growing Young Leaders, I think, is a great example of the church trying something, at least our corner of the church, trying something that hasn't really been done. And I can say that it's a beautiful thing to observe and now be a part of.
Yeah, amazing. And so this is kind of uncharted territory. There's never been a position like this. So you're the first leader to be able to kind of spearhead this movement. And so I imagine that some of it is, you had your job description, whatever that is, but as the boots hit the ground, you're having to kind of adapt or create new ground. How
What
has
was
that worked out?
that saying that was used a lot during the pandemic? We're building the plane as we fly it. That's kind of what the job feels like a bit, because it's true. The program, I didn't create the program. The scholarship pre-existed me, but they had never had a director or even one, employee fully dedicated to overseeing the program. But I think they've seen the value of it, the growth of it, the fruits of it, and they realized we want to actually put somebody in a director position over it. So I am the first to do that. Which is an honor, but absolutely, it's a lot of learning, it's a lot of listening, it's a lot of adjusting and seeing, what do these students need? What do our future leaders need, and how can we provide it? So I'm just grateful for the trust that our leadership has placed in me to kind of lead in this new way. And I think it's been an amazing experience thus far, and I'm even more excited for the future to come.
Yeah, and so, and to be able to pour into, to identify future leaders in our church, I think is so important. I know our conference president has often mentioned that there are two primary people that we hire, primary roles, and that's pastors and teachers. And that's such a huge part of the mission that we do. Obviously, our local churches and local church leaders are a huge part of our mission, But in terms of the people that we hire,
Yeah.
it's pastors and teachers. So it kind of makes sense for us to say, okay, so if that's what we do and that's who we hire, what is the
Hmm.
path and how can we identify and encourage who those leaders are?
Absolutely. I mean, that is what we do, right? We provide church community and we provide education, which are two wonderful things.
Mm-hmm.
And neither of those can happen without good,
Mm-hmm.
passionate, qualified pastors and teachers. Now, I will say that ultimately growing young leaders desires to create pathways for other church work areas as well, because
Mm.
the Adventist church also has business professionals.
That's right.
We have treasurers and school business managers, we have IT professionals, we
Mm-hmm.
have media professionals. And so
Mm-hmm.
eventually we want to get to a place where we're providing support for all of those career paths in
Right.
the church. But we're starting, at the foundation of teachers and pastors, because we know that, and we don't pretend that every young person should be in one of those two careers and that's it. Of course
Mm-hmm.
not. But what we do believe is that there are many young people with tremendous leadership qualities who would love careers in teaching and in
Mm.
pastoral ministry, but who either don't know much about those careers or have misconceptions about those careers, or maybe has never had anybody tell them that they would thrive in those careers. And if only they had those opportunities, or maybe they had the funding to attend college to do it,
Mm-hmm.
then they'd be able to discover their passion through those careers. I mean, that's a little bit of my story as
Mm-hmm.
well. And I'm so grateful that eventually my path led to pastoral ministry, thanks to
Mm.
others who believed in me to do it. And so I think we're hoping through growing young leaders to find those young people who have the gifts, have the passion, and we just want to help get them there.
Amazing. And so we, as I understand it, it's not just about a paid person who's involved in identifying and mentoring these people. It's over 50 young people
Mm-hmm.
who are committed to ministry. First of all, amen to that.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. We have in the pipeline
Hmm.
or recently graduated 50 young adults
Hmm.
who have faithfully committed to serving the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
That's right.
Like sometimes we hear all these stories and statistics about young
Hmm.
people leaving the church or being challenged in faith, but this is an example of a system that is identifying, supporting, mentoring young people, not just to stay in the church, but to serve the church,
That's
to
right. Yeah.
work in the church. That
And
must be an amazing.
100%. And they're great. Let me just tell you that the first task that I assigned myself when I stepped into this role was I need to meet these students, those who are
Mm,
in the program. And so I started in May. So the school year was just ending. So basically I had the summer. I gave myself 100 days. I said, I need to meet all 50 of these one-on-one, all 50 of these students, these scholars
mm,
one-on-one.
mhm,
So I started reaching out to them. Most of them had never met me before. There were a few I had known, but I said, hey, I'm the new director for this program that sponsors your scholarship. Can we meet? And a lot of them were virtual meetings. Some of them were over coffee or lunch. Danny, I was amazed. I mean, these are incredible young people who shared with me why they want to be pastors, why they want to be teachers.
mm,
And it just affirmed something that I already felt, but needed the affirmation to know that the future of the church is very bright.
mm.
We have challenges like all
Amazing.
organizations and like all religious organizations, of course, but the future is bright because as long as these guys are leading it, we're gonna
Amazing.
be in good shape.
I can't wait to hear more about them. But
Mm.
it sounds to me like a big component of this is mentorship, right?
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Mm.
Aaron, let's start with Aaron. Where'd you grow up and
Yeah.
what was your path to ministry, and were you mentored along the
Mm.
way?
Yeah. So I grew up in Sacramento, in our state capital in Northern California. I was the youngest child of four kids. I'm the baby. And are you the baby, Danny?
Yes, I am.
I
I'm the
just
youngest
got
as
that
well.
vibe. No,
How
it's
did
a
you
good thing. It's a
know?
good thing. We got it good, man. As the youngest, but
Yes.
youngest of four, raised by a single mom, non-Adventist family, and it was when when I was in first grade, my grandmother, who was Presbyterian,
Hmm.
had heard that there was a good Christian school in the neighborhood, and it was the Adventist school. She was an Adventist. She didn't care. She just heard it was a good Christian school. We went there for 1 year, but at the end of that year, my grandmother passed away. So my mom could not
Wow.
afford to keep us in the school. So we got pulled out. So I had that 1 year in first grade. I go to the local public school, which was good. But then my mom had decided when my kids get to middle school, I want to send them back. I want them to go back to that good
Mm.
Christian school we had that 1 year at. And I don't know how, but we're going to make it work because
So that stayed with her for
it
some
stayed
time.
with her. Yeah,
Mhm.
made an impact. Man, the ministry of our schools is like nothing else. You
So they
know,
plant seeds, and sometimes you see them flourish right away,
that's
but
right. Sometimes
sometimes,
they grow slowly, but they're still growing.
wow.
And so, and what was cool too is I know for a fact my mother could not afford tuition for 4 kids, but the school helped her, supported her. I'm sure, I wasn't privy to all the details, of course, but Worthy Student Fund or local church giving, whatever it was,
Wow.
they helped the Rennacker kids go back to that Adventist academy in Sacramento. And so in
Wow.
seventh grade, I went back and did my last 6 years before graduating there. And that's where I met Jesus, man. That's where and I met Jesus because I met those people who were so welcoming and loving to a scared, awkward, insecure 12-year-old, and they made me feel like
Amazing.
I belonged there. I got baptized, um, got to, play sports and had
Amen.
so much
That's where you got
fun. And
baptized.
yeah. And
Wow.
so
Amazing.
graduated from there and went to Pacific Union College. Super excited to go to that
Wow.
school to study journalism because
Mm.
once I realized I wasn't going to go to the NBA, which I didn't make that realization as soon as I should have. You hold on
Okay.
to the dream for a long time.
Yes. Yeah.
But I was like, well, I want to be a sports writer. So I went to PUC, studied journalism, and about halfway through, after getting involved in different ministries, I realized, man, I really enjoy ministry. I really
Mm.
enjoy service. I really enjoy, especially supporting young people, teens, and my peers in college. I
Mm.
think I want to be a youth pastor. I
Wow.
actually completed my journalism degree because I was enjoying those classes, and I think the communication skills were very valuable.
Mm.
So I didn't start from scratch with my theology degree. I got as many religion classes in as I could, but I got my journalism degree and was fortunate enough to still be hired by Southeastern California Conference with the understanding I would get more theology education immediately. So I got my
Mm.
master's pretty quickly in theology, pastored in a couple churches in Southeastern,
Mm-hmm.
um, your sister conference down here.
Mm-hmm.
And after about 9 years, was invited to be the youth director for the conference, which was
Excellent.
a lot of fun. And now I'm in this role with the union. And you asked about mentorship. And so I'll just
Yeah.
say that along the way, I had adults who really made certain that this non-Adventist kid from a, challenging home life, um, that he was taken care of, that he was supported. And then I remember the first adult who said they saw leadership in me was my coach, my
Mm.
academy basketball and football coach. And he would tell me that, Aren, you're a leader. Aren, you would make a great pastor, which few 14-year-olds or 15-year-olds, want to hear that because, pastors are those stuffy guys in the suits, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he said, hey, I'm just telling you, you'd make a great pastor. Okay, coach. Okay, coach. But he saw something. And I think when I was then 20 and I decided I want to be a pastor, because I had heard it before, it meant something as well.
Wow. Wait. So you're you were a non-Adventist kid, came to our school,
Mhm.
and then that's where that environment, people pouring into you, you learning about the Seventh Day Adventist faith, you got baptized, but
Mhm.
it wasn't just that. You're telling me that it wasn't your Bible teacher, it wasn't like the pastor in your church, a sports coach
Mm.
identified or was able to clarify something that he saw in you.
Mm.
And here you are, I don't know, 20 some years,
Yeah.
later or whatever. You're still reflecting on that story, on that person who identified. What is the
Oh, yeah.
power of somebody pouring into a young person like that?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'll never forget it. And to be clear, that village, each person provided support in their own way. I did
Mm-hmm.
have a great
Mm.
religion teacher. I did have a great youth pastor,
Okay.
multiple great youth pastors who gave me chances to lead the Wednesday night youth group and
Wow.
to meet with me for coffee. And I mean, they all were just such a gift. But
Amazing.
I will always remember my coach, speaking that into me, that he saw leadership and church leadership within
Mm.
me.
Mm.
And of course, it's something I won't forget. And even now, something that I talk about a lot with growing young leaders when I speak to rooms of adults. Because a lot of times I'm speaking to teenagers, of course, but when I'm
Mm-hmm.
speaking
Mm-hmm.
to leaders
Yeah.
and lay leaders, pastors, Pathfinder directors, whatever it is,
Yeah.
I talk about how we in the Adventist church need to instill an ICNU culture. which
Mm.
it's listed as, an acronym of I, C, and U, but it's really an I, C, and U culture, which is
Mm.
where adults are always on the lookout for naming gifts in young people to
Mm.
the young person,
Mm.
because there is such power when a pastor looks at a 15-year-old and says, hey, I just want to let you know, I see leadership in you.
Mm.
I see a lot of talent in you. And not as a way to be manipulative at all, but as a way to just identify that their gifts are noticed,
Mm.
maybe even before the young person notices it. I'm a leader? But come on, pastor, I don't know about that. No, I see something in you, and I want you to know that. And maybe that means a future in front of a classroom or in front of a church, or maybe it means a future in healthcare or a future in something else. But I just want you to know you've got some gifts, and I see that in
Wow.
you. And if I can help support develop those, you let me know.
That's
I'd love for you to call
amazing.
for offering sometime. I'd love to help, show you how to teach a Sabbath school. There's amazing power in that.
Wow. So it's possible that a pastor or a teacher may not have that kind of cemented in their radar that wow,
Mm.
I ought to be doing, or the impact
Mm.
that can have. But maybe that's a helpful practice, right, for pastors
Mhm.
and teachers,
And lay leaders too, of course.
lay leaders, who see young people and who say, wow, this person is showing leadership.
Yeah.
Like the power of that here you are, many years later, and you're still thinking of the person who help you identify. What is there some kind of magical thing that happens when you might be wondering as a young person about your life? You mentioned, like, for you wanted to be an MBA,
Yeah, yeah.
but somehow that came into, like, what actually happens when a
Yeah.
young person hears that?
Yeah, because, if we all remember when we were a teenager, whether you exuded confidence or not, there are a lot of insecurities when you're a
Mhm.
teenager. That's just part
Mhm.
of life and growth, and we get that.
You're trying to figure it
You're
out,
trying to
right?
figure it
Yeah.
out, man, and you're just trying to survive socially, and
Yeah.
you're trying to have an identity while also, not being on the spotlight. So it's a fun time, right?
Yeah.
But there's, a couple big questions that are always swirling around in a young person's head. One is
Mm.
is who am I now, and the
Mm.
other is who am I going to become? Who am I now? Am I cool?
Mm.
What do people think of me? What do I even offer? What am I known for? What talent do I even have?
Yeah.
And so when an adult, a respected leader, or another parent or a teacher says, I'll tell you who you are. Like, I saw
Mm.
what you just did in that presentation. Like,
Mm.
you are a leader. You're a speaker. You're a communicator. You're a gifted writer. I had an
Mm.
English teacher who read my paper in front of the class. Oh my goodness, Danny, I had never, and I liked writing, but when she saw that in me and
Mm.
said, hey, I want to read you all what Aaron wrote for this essay.
Wow.
Oh man,
That's a big honor.
that just meant everything, and I kind of sunk in my chair and probably blushed and my face
Yeah.
got red, but like my heart was moved by that.
It's an affirmation, public
From an
affirmation.
adult, from a professional, from somebody who I've seen, they get it, because adults are smart, right?
Yeah.
So that, and then that second question of what am I going to become? It says, wow, well, maybe that'll be my path.
Mm.
Maybe I can actually do this.
That can be so powerful. Those two questions, we're gonna hang on to those, right? That teenagers, as adults, sometimes we forget what it was like to be a teenager, but to remember to be in a place of uncertainty, you don't know what the future is gonna be. You're still trying to figure out. Those two are really foundational questions that we could be mindful of. Keep thinking about those. Even pray about, preach about in past, like, to be conscious in our sermon writing to see, hey, there's a teenager, there's a young person who's trying to figure out
Yeah.
who they are
Hmm.
and
Who they're going to become.
who they're going to become,
Yeah.
right? Because I have teenagers.
Yeah, yeah.
You know my son, and hopefully one day you'll meet my daughter. But I've had teenagers, should I say, because they're amazing adults now. And I remember the days when where I was telling them something, or I would tell my son or my daughter something, right? And they say, hey, well, this is how you do this and how you do that, right? And then it would just kind of like, okay, thanks, Dad, kind of. But then they'd come home and they're saying, Dad, guess what my teacher said?
Yeah, yeah.
Or guess what Pona, my youth pastor, right? Or whoever it might be. And they're like, they said to do this. And I said, I said to myself, isn't that exactly what I've been trying to tell? Like, isn't that exactly what I've told you? But now they're hearing it from someone who from someone who's not a family member, someone who's not a parent. The power of hearing it from a mentor, somebody that they respect or look up to, is so formative,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And of course, the parents should continue to name it too, because those seeds do get planted. They
Okay.
just might grow
Maybe
slower,
it's just
you know?
reinforcement,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
reinforcement but you're spot on about that. When it's somebody that because with the parent, the kid might tell themselves, "Oh, that's my dad or my mom. They have to say that.
Right.
My teacher didn't have to say that. My
Mhm.
coach didn't have to say that. My
Mhm.
pastor didn't have to invite me to do that thing." And so they see the authenticity of it.
Mhm.
And because that's a pastor and a teacher and a coach to all of my peers, but they chose me. I mean, that means so much. So amazing power in that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have this amazing capacity to influence or to shape, or like you said, it takes a village. So we're planting seeds along the way. And as we're thinking, obviously, we want our pastors and our teachers to be on the lookout
Mm-hmm.
for potential ministry leaders. Obviously, we want to create affirming environments where we're just mentoring young people in whatever. Like if you see somebody who's like, wow, this person can be a scientist or can be
Mm-hmm.
a nurse,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
To affirm, to help somebody along their path to identify who they are and who they could be is powerful, right? But we want, in our culture, in our conference, we want our pastors and our teachers to be more intentional about affirming and helping to identify those two roles, right?
Yeah.
Of pastor or educator.
That's
Is
right.
that correct?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's an intentional path
Mhm.
where they can be supported by.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we are really hoping that our leaders in our conferences can be on the lookout to identifying who would make great pastors and teachers and find joy and passion in those paths as well. Because the church is now creating avenues to really help make that happen,
Okay.
and growing young leaders. I wish this existed when my school
Yeah.
bills would have been a little lower for
Yeah,
sure,
yeah. So practically speaking, what
Yeah.
does that mean? Let's say a pastor in a local church were to identify uh, a student who
Yeah.
they think that could be a pastor. What?
Yeah, perfect. So obviously having that conversation with the student, and if the student says, "Yeah, this is what I want. I want to study theology to be a pastor, or I want to study education to be a teacher." And of course, when
Mhm.
we say teacher, that could be elementary, middle school, secondary, uh, in the academy system, the Adventist, school system. And as a pastor, it could be a children's pastor, youth pastor, young adult, soul, senior, worship disciple,
Mhm.
media. I'm sure there's a ton out there. So,
Mhm.
um, if a student then says, "Let me apply for the Growing Young Leader Scholarship," it should be somebody who's in their senior year, their 12th grade year, and they don't have to attend Adventist school. It can be a public school student, as long as they're a Seventh-day Adventist graduating 12th grader, they would complete our application.
Okay.
And it's
So
one
there's
application for our entire union. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So there's an application that they would complete. It asks them to share a little about themselves, the career they want to go into, where they're planning to study, some references. They submit that application to their local conference. If they're submitting as an education student, a future education student, they would submit it to their conference's education department. If they're submitting as a theology student, it would be to their conference's ministerial department. And each conference gets to select 2 scholars every year. And we have 7 conferences in our union. So that's 14 new Growing Young Leader scholars if all the spots are taken each year,
Every year.
which is great.
So
here's
every year we get to, invite
That's right.
2 new young scholars.
That's right.
In our conference.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Yeah. And oftentimes it's one education student and one theology student.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's different. But here's what the student receives if they are selected is if they attend one of our 2 schools in our union, Pacific Union College in Northern California, La Sierra University in Southern California, and they're chosen for the Growing Young Leader Scholarship, they receive up to $20,000 in tuition assistance per year for 4 years.
$20,000.
Yeah, and
in
we
the
say up
scholarship.
to because it's a 3-way partnership to provide those funds, and one piece of that partnership is the school itself. And it will be a little bit dependent on each student's financial situation, other scholarships they may be receiving, but it can be up to $20,000
Okay. Hmm.
per year for 4 years, renewable. And they don't have to reapply each year. It's just as long as they are still on track, meeting our GPA requirement, that 20K, up to 20K will be there each year. So it
That's
can be up to
amazing.
$80,000 of
So
tuition. Yeah,
this is a significant
significant.
investment into future leaders. This isn't just like, hey, money for books, right? This
Yeah.
is a significant investment of up to 4 years.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. It's a nice scholarship, and in addition to the funding, we do provide that direct mentorship. So I, as the director of the program, am meeting with students. We give them opportunities to meet others who can be supportive in their journey. We recently held a meeting for all of our current education scholars on Zoom because they're at different schools. With our union education department, where they met our associate education directors in the union, one who specializes in elementary ed, one who specializes in secondary ed, and they offered themselves as mentors to each of those students and say, if you ever have questions about your calling, your career, your path, your classes, here's our number, here's our email, reach out to us, we'll take you out to lunch. I mean, these are, when you're a college student, having a union education director make themselves personally available to you for any kind of mentorship is valuable.
Yeah, right.
We make sure that they know who's in their local conference office as well, so that they can have those networks, those connections. A lot of the connections that we have to work really hard for, we just want to make those happen so that they're set up for career placement and for success in their career. So we offer that mentorship piece. And then when they graduate and start working, we make sure they have a mentor when they're in the field as well. And then the career placement assistance. So when they're getting ready to work, we make sure the conferences are aware of who's graduating, that they're on the radar, that they're getting those interview opportunities. So we're doing everything we can to set them up for success in that career along the way.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I want to say as well, students can apply if they attend another school outside of our union, another Adventist school.
Okay,
That's not in the Pacific Union.
So if you're like a pastor is meeting like a student and they're like, well, yeah, but I'd really like to go to Walla Walla or I'd like to go to Andrews
They can still
University.
apply.
Okay.
It's a smaller scholarship because it goes from that 3-way match to a 2-way match because obviously our school is not contributing to that scholarship, but the union and the conference still are. So it's predominantly conference sponsored at that point, but it's about a $5,000 a year scholarship, which is still great. And it's renewable for 4 years, and there's loan repayment assistance for those students as well.
Wow.
Because the understanding is anybody who receives the scholarship, the agreement is they're going to work in the Pacific Union for a minimum of 3 to 5 years post-graduation.
Okay.
So if they went to a school outside of our union and they get the smaller scholarship, well, we're going to help you pay back your student loans if you have any at that point. So it's a great way to support them and get their career started off on the right path.
So it's a recognition that having a mission to want to serve in the church is amazing, but it's also takes resources. So here's an investment into those resources to help them to reach that goal.
That's right.
And but it's not just financial. It's also kind of providing mentors along the way. I know that through your assistance, I've gotten to meet some of our young scholars that are in our schools, and so we've developed relationships and we keep in touch. And
we send. I know that both the union and the conference will send gifts to the students. You know, Valentine's Day cookies, or we'll send gift cards. I know conferences do things to support their students, and it just makes my heart swell to think of these college students, going into their dorm and Pastor Danny, sent me something, or my conference. Education superintendent sent me something. They're thinking of me right now as I'm in my sophomore year. They know who I am, and think how valuable that is when the time comes to start applying for jobs. So we're trying to create a system and a culture and a pipeline where our future leaders feel the support from day one. When I was the youth director in Southeastern, we started doing some of this work actually, where we went around to our academies and we talked to students about ministry and education, and we even surveyed them. And I'll always remember some of the results we got from our academy students about their feelings towards pastoral ministry in particular. And I remember we asked a question like, what is the number one reason why you wouldn't be a pastor? And the top answers, I think number one was something like, I'm not spiritual enough. So this idea
Mm.
that only the most perfectly religious,
Yeah.
spiritual person can be a pastor,
Like they've
which
arrived at a certain
yeah,
spiritual state.
the high school student thinks, well, I'm not perfect spiritually, so I can't be a pastor. Well, of
Hmm.
course, none of us are, and that's not the case.
Right.
I think the second one was I don't like public speaking,
Mm.
and look, is that a valuable tool as a pastor? Sure, but I know many great pastors who do not like public speaking, and their
Hmm.
role doesn't require a lot of public speaking, but they're great pastors because of what they do behind the scenes, because of how they
Hmm.
serve their community.
Very
Shoot,
relational
very
people.
relational. When I started as a pastor, Danny, I thought it would just be preaching on stage and baptizing kids in the water. And then
Hmm.
I got to my church and it was very little of that. It was
Yeah.
90% stuff that was not seen on stage. It was behind the scenes. It was relational.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned to love about it.
And
So
that could be some of the most meaningful things that we do.
absolutely. So not loving public speaking should not be a deal breaker for ministry.
Yeah.
Third one was, I don't want to be poor. And look,
Okay, that might be
that's okay, you
more
got us there.
realistic.
No, I mean, the truth is, though, that I do, from my conversations with a lot of young people, I think there's an understanding that pastors either work for free or for just donation only.
Yeah.
And that's true. No, I'm kidding. It's I tell them, listen, no, we are not millionaires, and if that's your requirement for a career, then yeah, you shouldn't be a pastor for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
If that's why you're trying to do a career, but we make a middle class salary. We have good benefits in our
Mhm.
organization. If you send your kid to Adventist school, you get great, discounts and.
Yeah. You
There-
have a
there-
retirement
you have-
plan.
yeah,
You have,
absolutely. And if you teach, you obviously have these vacations that come in, and
yeah.
there are jobs that certainly have higher salaries, but we don't work for free. And in the Adventist Church, we actually have one of the best pay structures for denominations based upon stability and security as it
Mhm.
goes. And do I
Mhm.
wish that teachers and pastors made more? Absolutely. But my wife and I just bought a home in Southern California last year,
Wow.
and that took some savings certainly, but
Amazing.
we try to at least let young people know that if this is what you want to do,
It's financially feasible.
yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
So, and then I'll say the last, and there were other things, but another big one is I'm not a man. And
Mm.
helping young women understand that while it's certain that in different pockets there are different views about women in leadership, that there are now thankfully many places in the Adventist Church that honor, support, acknowledge, and need women in leadership.
Yeah.
And we need more women pastors. We have many great women pastors.
Yes, we do.
And there are many young women who would make great pastors.
Absolutely. And the understanding and support for women in full ministry
Mhm.
is growing. It is
Yeah.
growing, and we see that. And certainly, it's great to have. I know in our conference we ordain women exactly the same way we ordain men,
Yeah.
and so we're seeing more and more of that in different places as well.
So we're trying to tell a new story
Hmm.
for both education and pastoral ministry, and media is a way we're doing that as well, which is, I was referencing our social media channels, and so
Mhm.
we've done these day in the life videos of what does it really look
Yeah.
like to be a teacher and a pastor. And we're working on a storytelling podcast right now that we're launching in about a month, where it's just a bunch of different Adventist stories. I've been talking to teachers, pastors, and different Adventists in the community, sharing their moments and memories that have stuck with them. And it's going to be a narrative style storytelling podcast that we're really excited about, to continue to tell that story of what it means to be part of the Adventist community and to be a leader in the Adventist community.
Amazing. Now, we've been talking about how the Growing Young approach has been certainly to provide scholarships,
Mhm.
but also to provide mentorship. And we're talking about the absolutely crucial component of an adult person in leadership to kind of help a young person kind of identify who they are and what they're going to be. What can we say to pastors in the local church about the importance of mentoring in the local church? Or you may say, a pastor may say, you know what, I don't have a big church, I don't have a strong youth ministry. What are the kinds of things should I be thinking about young people? Like, how do I approach ministry to, with all the responsibilities of in the church? I'm not a youth pastor. I don't have a youth
Yeah.
pastor. What is there a certain mindset? Are there certain things that a pastor should be looking to do in their local church as it relates to developing young leaders?
Yeah, that's a great question. Every church is different, of course, and,
Mm-hmm.
and the way to lead a church, I would never want to tell a pastor how they should lead their church. The hope is that every church has, at least one young person in it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if it doesn't, we need to ask those questions, why?
Mm-hmm.
I think what would be so valuable is if our pastors believe that it doesn't take a world-class, quote unquote, youth ministry to make young people feel seen by their church, by their pastor, and really by God, right? It doesn't have to look as good as the church down the street. Impactful, powerful, life-changing youth ministry can be as simple as a pastor tapping a young person on the shoulder and saying, how would you like to be involved? Something as small as even collecting the offering or saying a prayer or being in the worship team can be just the first step for a young person to see themselves with greater confidence and with greater involvement in a church. And that's when those I see in you conversations can come in that we talked about, right? But allowing for some level of involvement is such an important statement from the church that says we value our young people here. We want them on the platform. Having a youth ministry budget, even if it's not as much as you would like, but you want to see what a church values, look at the budget and where they allocate the funds. And that will tell you what they value.
How are they investing into young people? Right?
Absolutely. Giving them opportunities to lead, to learn. And this is where there's that time commitment. And I understand pastors are so busy, and I don't dismiss that. But if you give a young person an opportunity to lead in some way, big or small, or even if you had one Sabbath a year where you asked 3 young people to each do 10-minute homilies and that was the sermon or whatever it might be, but if you can follow up with them, if you can then sit down with them after and say, I want to talk about how you did a great job in this way. Here are some ways you can improve and let me know if I can help you practice this. That intentional presence conversation, that's when a young person starts thinking, man, I actually kind of liked that. I was so terrified to stand in front of that microphone, but I had fun. And I think if pastor asks me again, I want to try again, and I think I'll do better next time. You've just changed that person's life. And it doesn't mean they're going to be a pastor, and that's not even necessarily the ultimate goal. But maybe one day when they're a VP at their company, it's because their pastor invited them to go in front of a microphone for the first time. So the courage to hand the keys over in growing young language, we talk about keychain leadership.
That's right.
Leaders who hand the keychain over to the kids and give them that power.
Yeah.
Man,
there's a lot that, speaking about that, there's a lot of research that has been done on churches where young people were able to, into adulthood, sustain a strong faith. And they did find that that having these conversations, that giving leadership, that having, like, sometimes we think, oh, wow, we have to have a really cool and kind of trendy youth ministry with, like a really cool Sabbath school room with all the lights and the smoke and all that stuff. But the research shows that that's not really what sustains faith in the local church. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, it's relationships, and it's feeling as if I belong here. So if a young person, and a lot of times that extra stuff can come across, and this is not me judging any youth ministry, because no matter what it looks like, it needs to be authentic. It needs to tell a young person that this is us wanting you to feel like this is your church. And that doesn't require a lot of money to make, you don't need to put the rock climbing wall in the youth room. I mean, if you got that, great, but that's not required.
Yeah, that's not the key. Right?
No, what's key is that when a young person walks in, it's like, we're glad you're here, and we're going to make space for you to feel comfortable, because this is your church just as much as anybody else's. And the room, look, man, my first church, we were using it had a church school. The campus was both a church school and a church, right? So our youth room was a 5th grade classroom. And every Saturday morning, I, as the youth pastor, had to show up early, and I would have to get a deacon to help me move the couch in through the door. And this was a donated couch that had a futon inside, so it weighed about 7,000 pounds. And we would move it in, this ugly couch. We'd move the desks and the chairs aside. We'd plop that couch in there, throw in a couple bean bags. It didn't look great.
Yeah.
but it was like a small effort to make it more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as church ended or Sabbath school ended, we'd move the couch back out, set the
Wow.
classroom back up. It didn't look good. It
Yeah.
didn't look cool, but it worked so that our kids could have a space. Our youth ministry was rocking, man. Like we had all these kids who wanted to be there because we made sure they knew that this
Yeah.
space is for you.
So the other elements of they were accepted, they
Mhm.
they felt known,
Yeah.
they were given leadership, they were
Yeah.
being mentored. Those are so much more powerful than what it actually looks like. Is
That's
that
right.
right?
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah. It's the warmth,
Yeah.
you know,
So,
it's the pastor knowing the kid's name.
just like the relational things and as it relates to getting to know people. And so it's amazing, all those graduation speeches that say, "Hey, name the top, the past 5 Oscar
Yeah.
winners,
Yeah.
and name the past 5 Grammy
Nobel
Award,
Prize.
Nobel Prize winners," and everyone's mind is going blank, right? But then they say, "Hey, think of somebody who mentored you, someone who poured into you, the coach who saw
right.
something in you." And I think all of us can think of a mentor who knew us, who was relational with us, who made such an dramatic impact. And isn't that what it's about? Whether it's growing young or whether it's trying to have thriving
Yeah.
young people in our churches, it's about meeting people where they are, seeing them eye to eye, having relationships with them that can have such a profound, long-lasting impact as it relates to faith.
Absolutely. I've had young people who were in my first youth group who are now adults tell me moments that they remember when I was their youth pastor that I don't remember because it seems so insignificant.
Right.
But they remembered.
Wow.
And it meant something to them.
Yeah.
I mean, Danny, I had no clue what I was doing, as a youth pastor those first few years. You
Same.
know, no
When
clue.
I was a youth pastor, I was like, what am I actually doing here?
Yeah. But I said, I just want these kids to know I care about them. And I'm not very cool, and I don't have a lot of money, and I don't have a lot of this or that, but I'm going to make sure they know I care.
Yeah.
And they remember that.
And it made a big impact.
Made an impact. And,
Yeah.
and the same for me when I was a kid, right? So it's
Ministry
cool.
doesn't have to be flashy. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles.
And that's
for
why
it
it's
to
a
be
great job.
meaningful.
I tell young people, this was another one I didn't mention was I'm not a Bible expert. Why young people feel they can't be a pastor. Like, I don't know the scriptures as well as you have to know them. And I tell them, listen, yeah, scripture is important. We should all be reading and studying our scripture. It's a wonderful tool that we've been given to connect with God and to help others connect with the divine as well. But being a biblical scholar is actually a different job. Those people go get PhDs. They work in our universities. They're very important. Pastors are meant to be relationship experts, people experts, where we are able to make every person feel seen and valued by God. And scripture is a part of that process. But what a great job where just by nature of the position, people allow us to be part of their journey. And as long as we don't violate that trust, they're going to allow us to help lead in their lives. What
Beautiful.
a sacred honor. And it doesn't take the huge budget or the flashing lights. It takes a willing heart. And it's the same with our young people.
And how impactful it can be in something that can last a lifetime.
That's
Amazing.
right.
What a privilege of ministry, right?
100%. We're so lucky, man.
We're so blessed. So we're talking about a scholarship. We're talking about mentorship pipeline for these young scholars. And the way that they can do that is they would apply for a scholarship. And that application deadline is actually coming up. Tell us about that.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. So each year, it's easy to remember, the deadline each year is April 15. April 15. So
Tax day.
Tax day, right? Yeah. And now it's known for something else. So that is the deadline for students to submit their application to their conference, because then the conferences only have a few weeks to inform the union of who they're selecting to receive the scholarship.
There's like a conference kind of internal approval process and recommendation to the union.
Right. And then our goal is to announce all these scholarships, by graduation, and oftentimes at graduation, which is so exciting that it's,
amazing.
it's the academy graduation. We announce your school has a growing young leader scholar, who's getting these. So that timeline matters. So April 15, I will also say that on occasion, spaces do open up for non-freshmen. So if we have a student in the program who halfway through decides I'm actually going to pursue another career, and we say, hey, God bless you. Your church loves you and is proud of you. But that means their scholarship spot has just opened for those last 2 years, let's say, if they stop halfway through.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we get the question, hey, I'm halfway through my program. I'm having some financial challenges, but I want to be a pastor in the Adventist church. Can I apply?
Yeah.
And what we tell them is, while the Growing Young Leader Scholarship is predominantly created and curated for new 12th grade graduates, sometimes space does open up. So you should apply. Submit that application to your conference. And maybe it will work out for them to sponsor you as well. And you're now a Growing Young Leader Scholar for those last 2 years.
Yeah, some of our Southern California Conference Growing Young Leaders went to college, and then they actually discovered a call to ministry. And then they applied for the program. And so now they're part of our Growing Young Scholars. And so the message is, whoever it is, whether they're in high school or whether they're in college, and they feel a call to ministry, either pastoral or in education, that to definitely apply. So April 15th, it's coming up. If you're a pastor or a teacher, we're asking you to keep an eye out or to help us to spread the word. This is an amazing program, not just for scholarship, but for mentorship, of identifying young leaders to be able to be part of this program. And so we want to make sure that April 15 is the time that they submit that application, which can be found on the Growing Young.
Yeah, there's a few places to find it. Yeah, so ideally each conference has the application. And so if you talk to your teacher, your principal, your pastor, hopefully they know where they can get that application from. But right now, actually, the best spot for us is our social media. So our Instagram page, which is just @GrowingYoungLeaders, right there in our bio has a link to the application.
Awesome.
We also have a TikTok page as well, but the application bio or the application link is right there in our bio. And I do want to invite people to follow us on these channels, because it's a great way to see some great things that are happening in the Adventist community in the Pacific Union. We share about our visits to schools. We share about some of the really creative things that are happening. We share about our scholars who are in the program. We share about day in the life videos of teachers and pastors, because another big part of this job that I might have mentioned earlier is we want to tell a new story of what it means to be a teacher and a pastor. If I can be helpful, whether it be answering questions about our program or speaking to your students, whatever it might be, that's what I'm here for. You can find us @Growing Young Leaders on Instagram and TikTok, and make sure that you listen to the Ministry Path podcast.
Excellent.
Because my man Danny Chan is a gift to our conference and our leaders. So,
hey, Aren, it's been great getting to know you, and we can't wait to keep collaborating together as we seek to mentor and identify the future of our church.
That's right.
Thank you so much for pouring into us. And I just want to say thank you to the Pacific Union for having the vision to be able to support our young people with such an amazing program that's developing and identifying. We got over 50, right? Growing. So we're excited to see how those young people are going to impact their church here in the Pacific Union. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Ministry Path podcast. We can't wait to see you at the next one. Thank you so much, Aren, for joining me today. And let's keep building young leaders.
Thank you, Danny.